So hi, everyone. Welcome to Miami Lit Podcast, another special episode today regarding the Virginia Key issues. We have Esther joining us today and David Winker. Thank you for joining us and coming back.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is your second episode with us.
Yeah,
and today
happy.
You are showing us a different side because last time you were here, we talked about our love for books.
A love for Miami books. Miami
books
literature.
Right. And today you are helping us understand a little bit better everything that's happening within our city. We have Jason, who is also joining us over Zoom today. Jason, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks for having us again.
As your expertise. And last but not least, my co-host for today, Nadir Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, I guess this is going to be pretty interesting because we're going to see it from different perspectives of the same issue, but also talk about the developments that have occurred since we last spoke.
Absolutely. So let's start with updates. Since we last discussed this, what has happened?
Since I believe we were here on a Wednesday, on Thursday, we had a meeting with the directors of parks and real estate at Commissioner Russell's office, which was facilitated by the commissioner and his staff. His staff was also present. And we left that meeting believing that we were going to be in good faith looking at the disputes that we had with the amounts that might be owed, the time frame. I took documents with me. They asked me to just email them because they didn't want to take them at that point. I had a curious exchange with the parks director. But we left thinking that we were going to, do what businesses do when there's a disagreement, and that's to look at everyone's claim and try to figure out what the correct path forward was. And instead, I sent him my email with what I believe were discrepancies in what they were charging me on the monthly rent. Compared against the spreadsheet that they had sent me on the 9th for the first time after having asked for it multiple times and then being very resistant to provide it, which didn't help regardless. We had, I sent him some other documentation regarding when the lease was supposed to actually start, and I was going to go that weekend and reconcile against what checks I had issued to make sure that everything was actually reflected and correct. And instead, that afternoon, as I'm leaving, I had filmed an interview at Mega TV. And as I was leaving, I'm getting calls from the park telling me that the police are there and that they're looking for documents and that, I need to be there, that there's some code issues and that we have to shut down. And what do we do? I said, if they're telling you to shut down, shut down. I'm like, what are they asking for? And they're trying to explain to me, and they're looking for a certificate of use, a CU. And I said, well, let me get to the files. Let me see what I have. Well, it's supposed to be here. If it's not here, then, and it's starting to get really tense. I'm about an hour away, and then I get more calls. How far are you now? I'm about a half hour away. It was a half hour later. I mean, there've been other calls in between, but to make a long story short, Diana, who's my director of marketing and programs and operations, she was forced to sign an arrest affidavit, which may not be a big deal for people that know the process, but for a young woman that's never done anything illegal, who doesn't own the business, they took her ID and put it in her information and told her, if you don't sign it, you're going to jail. And it's like she was mortified. She has to go to court now to clear her name.
Wow.
I have a question. How common is it that police get involved in business, or operations or things of this nature?
I've personally never seen it, and the way that the process normally works is, here we are in a studio space. And if a business license is required, you'll actually get a visit from a tax representative of the city or the county, depending on who it is, who will say, you guys know you have to have a business tax receipt, right? Okay, yes, fill out this form. And, it's all user friendly, right? It's really a method to collect money to get what's going on. The city of Miami has recently criminalized operating a business without a CU. And that's where this
change made.
I think it was about 6 months ago.
Oh, very recent.
Yeah, it's very recent. And it is, listen, has this happened with someone's running like an illegal nightclub? Yes, it has. Look, it has happened in very egregious, dangerous situations. In this case, it was, I got a call from Esther and it was like, hey, they want me to come. And it's like, don't go. Like this is all trumped up to try to arrest you. They're going to take you away in handcuffs. And,
I'm like, I have to go. My people are there.
And they, here they are. They did an arrest warrant for, an employee. But, the idea is she's charged with a crime, right? Let's be clear. They're charged with a crime. It's a criminal act. And my answer to you is, of course, it's not normal. Of course, it's, this is not how the process normally would work. And then Esther's going to give you some background on, why there isn't a CU, right? I mean, it's not that it wasn't applied for. It's not that it's not pending. I mean, there's things that are going on with it. So this is not a case where, and I think in this case, it's a very unusual circumstance where she's in a facility provided by the city of Miami, right? Under a lease with the city of Miami, with the city of Miami constantly visiting and doing stuff. And then all of a sudden now you don't have the CU. We don't care that you've applied for it. We don't care that it's pending. We don't care that it's our fault, the city, that you don't have it. You don't have it. That's a crime. And I would say to you, I personally have not seen it. Like I said, outside the context of a Saturday night, illegal nightclub, illegally selling liquor. This is not normal.
And then how is it, like, I guess, legally enforceable that Diana, who isn't the business owner, signs a document that's for her? Like, how does that kind of work out?
It's just like who's the representative of the business operating the business at that point. So, this is like so many of, abusive, what's going to happen? The charge is going to get dropped. I mean, of course, but it's just a way to threaten, intimidate. I mean, if you see the video, you
like
see
5 cops there. It's like,
I think it's 7 cops
like
with, all these little kids sitting there. And it's like, it takes 7 cops to do this. It was pure
didn't even show
intimidation.
Up after all this.
So where are we? Where are we? Havana? Or are we in Miami? I don't quite understand what's going on here.
I think we're in Moscow, to be honest with you.
That sounds like thuggery to me from over here. I mean, what's behind you? What?
Thuggery.
He's hearing something thundering?
Yeah.
No, thuggery.
Thuggery. It sounds like thuggery. I mean, what's behind all this? Because, when you look at this from the outside in, last time we came together, it seems like the city is going out of their way in a coordinated effort to do certain things. Is there something happening here with developers that we don't know about? I mean, what's really behind all of this? Because Miami's having a big housing crisis right now where families are being kicked out of their homes because they can't afford the rents. I remember we were together last time. I told you about a family member, a friend of ours, who told us about folks living at Camilla's house who are making $100,000 a year but can't find housing. And the commissioners seem to be punting at Dade County. This happening in the city of Miami, I don't know, but something about all of this with the aggressiveness that they're using to move you out of there and do other things just doesn't really add up.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically what we have to do is look at this whole proposal for the homeless encampment as a development project, because it puts residential living into a park space. And, realistically, is that you talk to people that are in this industry, and not industry, in this field, that work with these populations, and they all tell you the same thing. This doesn't work. You can't isolate people that are in crisis and then expect them to all of a sudden, get better because you locked them away somewhere. And they'll tell you, oh, they're not locked away. It's voluntary. I mean, there are just so many things that are wrong here. And, they came at me really hard. This was a Friday afternoon at 10:30 on Twitter. The city is making all sorts of accusations against me about how I owe them over $140,000, a number that has never been claimed until 10 o'clock, 10:30 that night, that I constructed illegally. The city built the facility, not me. And then there was something else that I owed taxes. What taxes? The occupational license? I mean, what's an occupational license? I now am more familiar with it. $45 a year. So, but they're Then there's a draft of a termination letter dated the same day that I was meeting with these directors.
For your lease?
Yeah. And that doesn't get served without a signature until Sunday morning at about 10:30. So this is a big city with a multitude of resources and employees focusing on a kayak shop on a Friday night, late on a Friday night, on a Sunday morning. And then on Monday, and by the way, that termination didn't include anything about the 140. And then on Monday, they send a follow-up email like saying, oh, don't forget to accuse her of being a deadbeat.
So you're saying that the city's saying that you owe them $140,000?
Over 140. Mm-hmm.
And how did they come to that number?
You would have to ask the city. Yeah.
They don't provide you with details?
No. The only thing that they provided me with, I mean, I think what they're doing is they're looking at my past annual rent payments and they're calculating what it could be. Have we grown? Yes, we've grown. That's what a successful business does. We grow every year. So we started from nothing.
Is that something that they can do? Because I'm assuming your rent was a fixed number.
We have monthly rent and then we have percentage rent. And we have a dispute over what I owe. Because what's happened is we had certain rent abatements, time periods during which rent was not due and percentage rent wasn't due.
During COVID?
During COVID and also during Irma. Because when Irma happened, the city was dumping debris in the field behind us and we got shut down. And even though at that point the administration acknowledged that, we were being, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, adversely affected, but more so than any other closure. And they moved it over to Marine Stadium to a building that was in pretty bad conditions. And but still, we were able to operate, and I was appreciative of it. So, with that administration, there's this understanding that there's a problem, and they're trying to minimize, the impact. But now they're saying, oh no, and then we had the seawall construction, and there's some language in the lease which might or might not be strong enough, and that becomes a legal question about tolling the lease during all of these closures.
Tolling,
because it's a 5-year lease, and it's been. I mean, I've had elected officials out there saying that I was there and they're a no bid deal, that I have some godfather that's been helping me hide my lease, that I'm living off the taxpayers.
Godfather.
A godfather.
I'm sorry, that's funny.
If I had a godfather, I don't think I'd be in this situation right now. But I mean, all sorts of things, that I don't pay my staff, that I built illegally. I pay my staff. My staff makes good money. I have a staff of about 17, including guides. And on average, they make about $25 an hour. Some make a little more. Some make. They earn it. Listen, okay, a good portion of that, not the majority, but they make tips, and they make good money in tips because we provide an actual service, and people recognize that. And when I do well, they do well because I'm not greedy. And it's unfortunate to have a sitting official say, first of all, he was disparaging McDonald's workers, and then questioning whether, well, she says this, that, and that would be almost 400,000 in payroll. I don't think it's 400.
It's clear. You know what? It's clear some of them have never run a business before, because these are career politicians who have no idea what it means to make payroll, because they're using taxpayer money that they're not accountable for, frankly. And it's again, I think this is thuggery, and I hope there's a way we can help you not only raise awareness, but somehow going back to the way this decision was made, which was very suspicious, frankly, that there's no clear record about how this decision was made. But then on top of that, all these things that have happened since, the use of police to do certain things, intimidating you with the press, intimidating you in the public space, it's and making arguments, frankly, this whole plan makes about as much sense as a trapdoor on a canoe. You don't put trapdoors on canoe, folks, right? I bet you the city of Miami would if you let them, because they don't know what they're doing. But this reminds me of all these battles where you have the private sector and the community being beat up on because the government's failing to do the basics that they need to do, creating a public safety problem, frankly. I've spoken to clients of mine who live on the Key, longtime residents of the Key, and they're apoplectic about this. They weren't consulted on it. They have no idea why the city is doing what they're doing, but they're not surprised by it. And they're saying, look, you all go ahead and do that. A lot of Key residents that I've spoken to believe that this is just a gateway issue they're using for development,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who want to get their hands on that land. There's not many places to build. And what they're going to essentially do is create a real big problem for the economy of that whole region, and traffic problems and all sorts of other issues. And of course, hurt an industry or travel that we kind of need down there for beaches. And that's the sort of thing they want to do, fine. But my point is on your issue, I hear you saying these stories, and I've seen this in Washington so much. The last 30 years we've been working up there. We hear property fights out in California. We hear about property fights out in Texas. We hear so many things happening where the government overreaches. And you have these politicians in Miami that they clearly do not know how the free market works. They're very quick, by the way, of going and trying to create all this cyber coin stuff. I'm a big fan of cyber coins and Bitcoin. I love all that stuff. But maybe they should focus on the basics, on things that really matter. And they're demonstrating through their actions in the key that if they can't get that right, if they cannot use the power they've been entrusted correctly, they cannot be entrusted with things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, because they frankly don't even understand what all that's about. So there's something here that I hope you all stay on them. I hope that there's a way that you all can challenge them, and not only in court, but in the court of public opinion. Because if we don't challenge governments now to do the right thing, they're going to keep doing this over and over and over again.
So on that, David, could you kind of give us some context about what makes the city of Miami, I guess, a bit different from other cities or municipalities, especially when it comes to situations of either property or business disputes?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because I will say this is happening around. I mean, I was the lawyer for the country club of Coral Gables, and it was they actually came in the middle of the night, went to a judge, got a signed order. You talk about thinking I actually was in the press. It was one of the most un-American things I'd ever seen. They showed up the next morning, cops, signed order, signed in the middle of the night, saying, we now run this property. This receiver runs this property. You have to leave. And we were able to undo that. But you're seeing this kind of trend of this authoritarian trend that when it comes to this stuff, and that happened to be a Toronto-based restaurateur family, and they're never going to do business in South Florida again, right? That was something they'd never experienced. And so, I'm a capitalist. It's funny. I'm actually known as an activist. I'm actually I see all this as a breakdown of capitalism, right? That's right. We need to encourage business. We need to encourage jobs. We need to encourage tourism. And I think one of the things that, I think one of the problems that this is failure to see what, it's like what brings people here is our natural environment. And then we're going to overbuild our natural environment and have no swim days because of fecal matter in the bay. We're going to get rid of the recreational opportunities on Virginia Key, our last big green space after Melreese is being developed, and replace it as a homeless encampment, which is not an optimum use of park space, which we'll get into. So I think that when you talk about why is City of Miami, I think City of Miami is particularly bad about this because of lack of leadership, right? And I'm going to tell you a story again, another kind of breakdown of capitalism story. I was at a studio and was doing a show, and there was a developer who developed in California and in North Carolina. And he said, I find it fascinating what y'all do, these fights you have. And he said, you guys on Brickell, there'll be a 20 by 20 piece of grass, and you guys are fighting like tigers over it. And he's like, I'm not making fun of it. That's the one place that people have to go to walk their pet, be outside. And he goes, ironically, he's in California, which he's I find overregulated. He goes, I don't have those fights because the people have made the decision. If you're going to put up 40-acre development, guess what? 15 acres is park or whatever it was. He's like, that has all been done in advance. And he goes, ironically, in overregulated areas, he's like, I find them overregulated, but it's easier for me to do business because the rules are there. There's no getting around the rules.
So is it almost compared to California to here, that our leaders can't come to a decision of the use?
Well, I think it goes to more of we don't have these discussions, right? Here I'll give you the breakdown on this. We have a master plan for Virginia Key. It's been decided on. The right people were at the table, and it's there. I could bring you the document. Here's what we want to do with this. And despite that, despite having a master plan that we've all agreed on, all of a sudden, we're now going to put a homeless encampment.
Well, you also, let me backtrack a little bit. I'll go off topic a little bit first. To Jason's point about, disorder, even on the monthly rent where it's like a set amount defined under the lease, when I did the calculations, I realized that they had been overcharging me monthly rent. So over the period of time, just poor records keeping. They hit me with an audit notice, of course, after all this. And I sat back because I've never had anything, that magnitude. They want to look at everything. And I know it's a witch hunt. Like usually I would be like welcoming, come look, I'm not hiding anything from you. But it's a witch hunt, so I'm more apprehensive. And then I realized in thinking about it, I said, what they should be auditing is themselves. Because you have the same commissioner go out on a radio show that he went out to, counter what I had just said. And his position was that, there's another tenant that owes over $300,000 and we're going after them next. It's like, okay, hold on. Let's say that I owe you $140,000. Why are you going after me first? Is it because of 140, or is it because you didn't like what I said? I took you on, I challenged your project, and now you're coming after me. So don't tell me it's not retaliation when it is. You're taking away a service that our community values, and you're leaving them with nothing. This is you're affecting the community. I've never said to them, I'm not paying you. Quite the opposite. I said, we need to figure out what the numbers are so that we can be, on
the same page.
Yeah, because listen, my lease is coming up. I actually thought that we were still under lease. My numbers were wrong. I lost a year. I'm sorry. I think a lot of people lost a year. It wasn't even a full year. It's a few months in the difference, but we fast forward in talking about land and so forth. We do have this zero net loss, which I guess it's an ordinance or something in the city.
Comprehensive plan.
Yeah, the comprehensive plan. We're not supposed to lose any parkland. And in the same meeting where they approved this encampment project, they were considering a special area plan for development that would have taken some parkland and placed it on the rooftop of high rises.
Right, we talked about that on the other.
So we're taking actual parkland. And I think the first thing that has to happen is we have to define what parkland means.
Right.
It's not a marina.
And what that looks like in our city.
It's not tennis courts. It's not a golf course. You've already said it's not a golf course. City of Miami said. But it's also not tennis courts. It's also not, again, marinas. You got a park, Antonio Maceo Park, that they're putting in. It's a small park in an area that's mostly apartments. And, it's not a high income neighborhood. It's a lot of retirees and working folks, and they're putting in a jet ski marina on Blue Lagoon.
So there's a big question of accessibility as well with those plans.
That changes everything. So the kids that go out there and play, the people that go out there and have this green space, that changes it. But between the rooftop patio replacement for actual parkland, the overgrowth of marinas because they're more profitable. A park will never be more profitable than a marina. It just isn't going to happen.
So what you're basically saying is we might take away this green space, but we're going to have to replenish it somewhere else.
Right. And then how do you replenish it? These are not replacements.
Right, because it's not equivalent.
You're not.
Right. They're putting
taking away an apple.
You're getting a 20 by 20 foot swale, et cetera. But I think, but what I would say to you is part of like what I would to actively listen to what Esther's saying is it's a breakdown of the relationship between the governed and the governors, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's what do people want, right? Do we want this continued terrorization of private business, right? For code compliance, right? We're seeing it at with Bill Fuller and Ball and Chain.
Well, this is a great transition into.
But it's not. So it's not. This is There is a history of this weaponization, and I would say to you to actively listen to what Esther's saying is this idea of there's a culture of non-compliance at the city. So what they're going to do to you is you're going to be running your business in any normal city. There's a yearly accounting. You have a process. You have a supervisor of the contract. You sit down. You true up at the end of the year. Like it's all done properly. When none of that is done, and everyone's out of compliance, right? Every contract that the city has as far as real estate, I would posit is out of compliance right now. So what does that mean? It's like shooting fish in a barrel then. Who gets prosecuted, right? Who it's like everyone's speeding on the highway.
Well, I think I know who gets prosecuted. It's a person who speaks up and says stuff they don't want to hear.
Well, it depends. I mean, think about in the highway, when everyone's speeding, who gets pulled over? Black people, right? Like, let's talk about it's who it ends up with people being targeted for whatever reason. In the city of Miami, what does it become? It's political speech. Bill Fuller supports upon somebody other than Joe Carollo. Esther speaks out against a plan involving the park. So though it's our tolerance for the weaponization of the tools of government against business. And it's making our community a worse place to live.
And that's something, by the way, it's interesting you guys are saying that, because hearing this conversation last week and now today, even more so, talking about master plans, talking about due process that I don't see here, talking about civilized nations, civilized people engaging in a open and robust debate and not being punished for it. I've spent a lot of my private practice dealing in international claims law, where we help American citizens prevent or secure compensation for foreign governments doing exactly what I see starting to happen in the city of Miami. And frankly, that's a little scary that I say something like that. We've worked on cases in Latin America, and not just we've done Cuba claims cases, but we've done other takings cases and other sorts of cases where the governments and local governments use police powers to, frankly, engage in unlawful behavior. I'm not saying that's what's happening here in Miami. I haven't analyzed all the facts. I can't say for sure. But looking from the outside in and hearing these stories, it's almost as if this is a path that we should not be going on, but we already have gone down, that I've seen in my private law practice when we go up against foreign governments that are taking property from American citizens without due process of law. Under international law and under the standards that you apply in some of those cases, what's happened in your case, Esther, there's already been, technically speaking, breaking of the law, the way that they've approached and dealt with your problem. So it's quite troubling to see that. And I hope that we can reorient the discussion, and whoever's doing this in the city of Miami, if you're listening to this group of people speaking to you, stop acting like thugs, come out of the shadows and engage in a civilized discussion, follow your laws, and do not use the police to terrorize people who are just trying to make a living and frankly make the most productive use of the property available up until now. It just makes no sense.
No,
why they're not following their own rules.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because, even if you look at the demeanor of the police, they seemed uncomfortable. Because
I can see that. Yeah.
I don't think that's their role. And I don't, when I looked at it, it didn't seem like they were embracing that role. It's like they were there because somebody said something horrible was going on. And I'm not selling alcohol. I'm not running a prostitution ring. I'm not cooking meth. It's like, okay, you need me to close? I'll close. I did something wrong. How do I fix it? But I don't even think there's a path forward to fixing it. And that's really sad, because, I said before, I'm proud of what we did here. I'm proud of the opportunities that we created and the access that we created for our community. And it's been taken away, and not just from me, but from the people who work for me,
the most concerning thing,
and from the community.
Right. The most concerning thing is that your business is an asset to the city, to the people around that area. So what do you guys think this means for small business owners in Miami?
I think they're in trouble. I think you can't do business with the city of Miami.
Well, you can't speak up if you're a small business.
No, I think you can't do business, because the other thing is, as soon as you get successful, as soon as you build it, then there's someone else, a pariente de pariente, the relative of the relative, that looks at it and says, "Oh, put it out for bid, and I'm going to get that."
Well, and from what I understand, I've always wondered. Didn't you all have a problem down there a few years ago with one of the golf courses in Miami-Dade County? They were trying to the one near the airport.
The MLS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We're in the middle of that right now, and it's interesting because one of the things I would like when we talk about broad policy prescriptives, one of the things you could do, you could say, okay, parks stay parks, right? So that would have stopped the Mel Reese, that would have stopped the golf course thing, right? A park stays a park. It doesn't become a commercial development. We're not going to build stadiums. Now we're talking about we're building the University of Miami Stadium at Tropical Park, right? We're using
It's a county park.
Are
Yes.
parks public property?
Yeah.
They are. And then there are protections built in to our charters, which is like our constitution of our cities.
Sure, but who enforces the charter?
But that's my point is you end up with, and then what I would say to you is one of the things that's exhausting. So like, it's like, I've been involved in this battle with, there's a Wawa that they're trying to put across the street from the elementary school in Coral Gables.
Grove, right in front of Carver, right?
Right in front of Carver.
Right across,
and we killed it off. Like we beat Wawa. Like it was actually an incredible legal victory. And it was interesting because I was talking to the reporter about it. And I was like, she's like, this is really an incredible legal victory. And I was like, I got to tell you something. I want to put this in a little perspective. Like, here's these people who had to come up with this money to pay me to get this. Like, what's our victory? We actually got the city to follow its own rules.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's really sad.
That's what I'm saying.
Sad that we
It's
have
exhausting.
To go to that
It's exhausting. It is hard on. It's a waste of resources. All these other productive activities, these productive economic activities, besides raising our kids, that we could be doing instead of this. And so I want to talk. We'll talk more about like kind of the systemic answers to this, which is like, frankly, elect better people.
So let me ask you something. So if you have a city that refuses to follow its own charter and its own rules and laws, as a resident, what's my recourse?
But that's the question. And it's interesting because I've said that is like when your city, I've been saying this for years, when your city has gone rogue, when your government has gone rogue, what do you do, right? What does that look like? And I think that we're all struggling with how to do that. I mean, Al Crespo just passed away, political blogger down here. And it's funny. I put an editorial that I'm going to read you the last line, but I did an editorial this morning and it's in the Herald. And it was,
I was that guy.
And he, the idea was, like he just would say the City of Miami Commission is nothing more than a criminal enterprise. Like he would just openly say that this is a criminal enterprise and you need to look at it like a criminal. Yeah, that was his famous thing was this city commission is nothing more than a criminal enterprise. And that's how he analyzed it. It's how he analyzed their actions. It's how he analyzed their motivations, their results. That's the paradigm that he looked at it through. So I will tell you I think that the attitude of law enforcement, which we haven't had law enforcement come into the city of Miami in a long time, is the attitude of law enforcement is, okay, you want us to come clean up your mess. You elected these people. You are electing these people. And I got to tell you something. These commissioners, I don't think hide who they are. It's not a case of them lying to us. Oh, we're going to come in and we're going to maximize your green space and we're going to have clean government. That's not what they're saying. I think they're in their defense, they're transparent about what they're going to do, right? I am broke. My house is in foreclosure. I need a job. I'm going to now come in and become your commissioner. And so when the results you get, I think that, it's again, another Crespoism is like and she, Esther balks at this, but it's like, we get the government we deserve.
And I disagree. I think if you're being fed a false narrative, then you're being defrauded, and no one desers to be defrauded.
But I don't think there's any false.
Victim blaming.
But we'll argue because I don't think there's any false narrative. I think
it is.
I don't think a Commissioner Joe Carollo doesn't hide who he is. Commissioner Alex Diaz-Portilla do not hide who they are. I mean, whatever you want to say about them, I don't think they hide.
I'll give you an example how. I am going to save your neighborhood from traffic. That's a lie.
They are going to save your neighborhood.
No, they're not.
They have.
They're not, because you know what's going to happen in a few months?
What?
Those barricades are going to come down and the traffic's going to be right back in.
But in the meantime, it stopped.
Hey, yes, excuse me. By the way, the trolls that came after me online and on Nextdoor, on Twitter, on Instagram, were the people that were either appointments from this commissioner or that have been benefiting from this illegal road closure. And to the tune of, as of about 3 months ago, I guess it's almost 4 now because time has flown, it was over $600,000 in overtime police. Again, not blaming the police. If somebody tells you I'm going to pay him to sit there and watch a barricade, That's what you do for overtime pay. That's what you do. But why are we spending that money? That's tax dollars. Not to mention all the outside counsel fees for both the city and the county. We're all paying that.
Well, what about your state legislature? What do they do when things like this happen? Do the local state reps get involved, or the U.S. Or what about the state attorney? Isn't there an anti-corruption unit down there?
But that's what I'm trying to tell you is I think that there is a little. If you keep electing, like it's like garbage in, garbage out. Like if we keep electing the same people, I'm not sure law enforcement is going to have the appetite to come in and clean it out, because it's like I'm going to take this corrupt individual, remove them from office.
Okay, well,
when you're only going to vote in an even more corrupt individual.
Before you go anywhere, we can start right there. If you're removed from office, you should be barred from running for office again. Period.
No, but I'm saying there'll be a new person. It's not like
okay.
This is, because I think I got to tell you something again in defense of our current commission. This has been a problem for 30 years. This isn't a new thing.
But David, it's never been this bad.
I think that most people would agree it's not been this bad.
What David was saying, though, so spot on about, and we have these talks with our clients when they tell us about, the big wins, right? But you really don't want to have to go through a trial or litigation, or even you shouldn't have to be going to lawyers to fix something that the political process should be correcting. That's the part of it that makes no sense to me. And you're saying 30 years has been going on. David, the last show we did last week on this, I was shocked to learn a lot of this. I've been out of Miami for a while now, but we were talking about how the same politicians or their sons or daughters or legacy seats are kind of what runs that town. And that's
especially
that can't be good for the body politic. And I think it's time to bring in some new people and figure out a way to bring some new thinkers in there. And it's great to see some folks running that are new in the political space. But it's rough to run campaigns down there, and it's controlled by someone or something. I don't know what, but that's where I think a lot of the change has to come from, because dragging this into court, do you know what you do to families when you try and litigate? It's rough. This is rough on people, and it takes time, it takes money, and it's exhausting. And I'm
going to jump in on that, because we as lawyers know the judges. I've had judges look me in the eye and just be like, "Hey, man, I think you got a great case here. But your solution is go vote, go get
exactly.
They don't have the appetite to solve that problem. They're like, the government gives me certain powers. My job is not to clean up your political problem.
So what
you elected these people.
What you're saying is I should get my ducks in a row and run for office.
Or we need to support candidates.
I think you should. That's a great idea.
And this is how a lot of campaigns
start. I'm going to have a lot of free time.
Where people decide to do it on the base of that, because when they see something like this, there's going to come a point where enough is enough. And I got to tell you something. I have often said nothing's going to change until the developers and the business people get tired of the corruption. Like, that's the level of it. The little guy can't do anything about it. But
the cost of doing business is just exorbitant in this.
That's what I'm saying. But when developers
winning from this corruption,
right? Are they?
Until they stop.
Stop. I mean, maybe once we run out of land, they stop.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I've represented folks down there on federal matters, not state or local matters, and I've had some pretty influential business people down there tell us we are tired of it. Yep. And I agree that when that community gets tired of being pushed around, being overregulated, and other things that I've been told, there's going to be pushback, because even the private sector has its limits, and you're pushing them, I think, to the limit in some of these cases. I'm not sure.
I think that's what it is. The answer is there's a tipping point, right? It's advantageous to a certain point. And it's like doing business with the mafia. It's like you come in and there are definite, like you hear the stories, right?
You're making me feel good.
But there are advantages to doing business with the mafia, right? There's no street crime. There's, and then.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
You have the Godfather.
Right.
But you start up that restaurant and everything's good. And then all of a sudden you get a visit and it's like, hey, you're making a lot of money. I want a piece of the action. And I think that part of what you're seeing here is, in Esther's case, I think it's less of a piece of the action and more of like, oh, you crossed the line. Mm-hmm. You are speaking out against something you shouldn't speak out against.
For that political speech.
Right. Yeah. And I think I think that we, again, have to recognize, like, what do we want our city to look like as far as that robust political debate. We've seen it over and over again where people are punished.
I'm going to add another element to this, and that's that I think you also have different parts of the same city working towards different special goals.
So like distractions.
Sure. It's because we saw it, for example, that meeting that we had on that Thursday, we have a parks director who sat there and scoffed at the idea that this homeless encampment would ever happen. I mean, she and it was like, that's so disrespectful. I mean, because, apparently, and again, there've been all this talk about all these crazy projects, and you think they're crazy until you start actually see them pop up. And then you're like,
so they're crazy.
Well, they're still crazy, but they're happening. I mean, how do you stop this? When do you stop this? What do we have to do to make this different? And we have to do something.
Well, I can tell you of one example. It didn't work. And that's kind of where me and David actually attempted to put some type of accountability. Was it 2019 or was it
right before the pandemic?
Right. So around 2019, we did a recall initiative on Commissioner Joe Carollo, where we collected. Well, I was tasked to collect. I believe it was like 2,000. Do you know the exact number?
Yeah, it was 2,400 or something like that.
Yeah, a bunch of signatures to do it. And at every single point in that process, we were met with resistance, both publicly, legally, behind closed doors. So I kind of wanted to revisit a point where what is the city's history whenever you have somebody who is engaging in political speech that doesn't coincide with the commission's views or goals? Yeah. What is a typical action of the commission, or what has happened in the past?
And we've seen, and the recall was a perfect example of that. Now the recall was a bad example because we probably would have gotten it if it hadn't been for the COVID, for the delays, right? It became a moot point, but we won every legal battle, right? At the end of the day, we won legally the case. And it goes back to the old saying of like, you can't fight City Hall. And there's many reasons you can't fight City Hall, but one of the reasons you can't fight City Hall is you're paying to fight yourself. Mm-hmm. So in that case, Joe Carollo's legal bills were paid for by us. I live in the city of Miami. I paid to fight him myself. And so part of what you're doing is you're funding, like you're basically, it's an unlimited, machine, right? There's an unlimited machine. So at every step of the way, you're getting fought by, one of the largest law firms in Miami, the City of Miami Legal Department, plus private counsel, right, who is being paid by taxpayer dollars. So I think that you're going into the teeth of the machine, which is well funded to ensure that doesn't happen. And, the attitude of the city isn't like, oh, here's a large percentage of someone's district that are upset with the commissioner. Like, let's let this process play out. It was, you lived it. We're going to fight you every step of the way. And you were out there collecting signatures. And, what did people tell you? I don't want to sign this because I'm going to get retaliated.
Even voters were scared.
You had to get 2,400 signatures.
That's I don't know. I believe it was under. I think it was like 1,900 or something like that.
Whatever the number was. But every time they went to a house, the person would say, and they said it was very interesting. It's funny, talk about a dynamic. It was the woman, but the woman wanted to sign it. I think if I remember, and the male would be in the back, like, "What are you doing? Don't sign that, Carollo. Well, Carollo's going to get us."
That's because we start the fight. I understand.
Like the voter was scared.
Talking about women, we start the fight, and then you guys jump in when there's no other recourse.
Yeah.
Right. Let's pause for a second because Jason has to go. Jason, thank you so much for spending your time with us. And we so appreciate your expertise and what you bring to the conversation. Just wanted to say thank you again.
Well, thank you for having us. And I think you're starting to see us to the beginning of a solution. Maybe we have to recruit you to run for office. I think that could
be a lot to do before that happens.
But it's great. It's great to be together with so many liberty warriors and defenders of property rights. I mean, those are fundamental rights. We got to fight for them. It begins in places like these. So thank you, Miami Lit, for doing this, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Likewise.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. But so going back to the whole collecting of the signatures, because you can see that same sentiment, not just with business owners or developers, but with literal like voters. Like I'm talking about, I would knock on the door, and what you just described wasn't just the once. Like, I wish that was the exception, but they know that this guy's bad business. They know that he's not doing it good, but they're scared to retaliate because they might not get the turkey at the comedor. Right. Or that they might have social pressure from another person. So it's very like Cuba mentality in that regard. And I did notice that especially from the older population. You see what I mean? Like,
it's horrible.
And it's crazy because the older population is who Corollo's base is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like, it was very authoritative. And the last thing I want to say was the Viernes Cultural. That was a lot of fun. So we actually got signatures at his own event, right? So he
hold on. Viernes Culturales was the nonprofit, and then he has his what is it? Viernes Pequeña Habana.
Okay, but
the knockoff event.
Oh, my bad.
But don't mix them up because I know that's a real sensitive issue.
He did mix them up,
No, I mixed them up for sure. But what I'm saying is, like, you know how he would have his own event.
He has his own event
at the place, right in front of Domino Park, right across the Ball and Chain, right?
Funded by tax dollars.
Right. So
where before it's funded privately or through grants or business.
So we are, doing our I don't want to say civic duty because it's not what it says like civic duty, but I'm expressing myself. I'm fully protected under the law to collect these signatures wherever I feel like, however I feel like. Mm-hmm. And as I'm collecting the signatures, the person on the stage, ten cuidado lo que tú firmes.
Really?
Ten cuidado lo que se firme. No confíe en esos niños. Like that. Like, so you have the institution trying to stop us.
Did you find that more people signed after that?
Well, in that moment, we actually did get a good amount of signatures. And then there was like an article written about it on Politico Cortadito about the whole thing. And that was really towards the tail end.
Yeah.
But it definitely exposed the bunch.
Yeah. Because I think what happens too is, and what's been happening here is that, they underestimate how pissed off people are. And they're fed up. And the more they do to try to push it, the worse it gets. Right now they've gone quiet. They called us elitist. They called us...
the C word.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was called... No, not yet. I haven't called the communist yet.
No, but that's going to come.
That's next, I'm sure.
That's the next one.
Yeah. We've been called grifter... Well, not grifters, but the equal... Deadbeats, yes, thank you. Deadbeats. I've been called a lot of things. And the more that they attack me, the more that people are standing up to defend us, to defend me. And I didn't expect that. I knew that people love the island and the park. And I didn't understand how much they love me too. And that's really moving. And that's probably the hardest thing for me to deal with. Because I feel like I've disappointed them. Because I should have and could have done better.
You're still fighting.
I am and I'm not, because I just, where I am today, would I love to operate in the park and provide the services? I would. But do I think that's ever going to happen again? I don't.
And also, I'm going to jump in on this emotional moment. It's also, as a friend of Esther, as a lawyer for Esther, like there comes a point where you have to advise your clients, like even if you could, you probably should not go back. Like the environment of renting space from the city, of being in business with the city is frightening. The rug can be pulled from you at any moment. And I always say when we were driving over, I said to her, it's like we're a right to work state, which really means right to fire, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is I can employ you and I can fire you because I don't like the shirt you're wearing. I don't like your new haircut. Like I'm literally allowed any reason. But then there's reasons I can't fire you. I can't fire you because you won't sleep with me. I can't fire you because of ethnicity or religious beliefs. There's reasons you can't do it. And that's a little bit how this feels, right? So she's in a month-to-month period now. They have every right. They have every right to terminate her lease. But that's not why they're terminating her lease. They're terminating her lease for a prohibited reason. And I think that is
under the guise of applause.
No, but they're using that. They're saying, just like I can fire you. But actually, the reason
They're
I'm
saying,
firing you.
hey, here's the bottom line. They have a hot mess. They can't even do simple math. You got a parks department with an absentee director who is more interested in photo ops and having some publicity than in actually what's happening in parks. It's you got a bike club that's getting dinged pretty hard right now. These people have done nothing other than go in there and build bike trails at their expense, with donations that they've sought. And do you have people going out there saying, "Oh, you don't pay anything"? Oh, it's always about. You should be paying them. You should be supporting them. You should be rewarding them for their efforts. They brought you something valuable that you, city, would never have been able to do on your own. And instead, you're penalizing them because they also stood up and said, this is not the place for this. We have to protect the park. And it's not just them. It's, everyone that goes into that park right now to enjoy any of these services is being penalized. They started closing the gate early. It's at 6:30 now. There's now a truck parked at the entrance so that no one can come in. We still got 2 hours of daylight.
Right.
Yeah,
there was always a sign up that said sunset, and whether or not those were the official park hours, that's what it's always been. And all of a sudden you do that without communicating it. And then today, the same parks director goes in and takes our signs down. Technically, I'm not gone yet. Why would you do that?
Well, see, technically not gone. You're even under the terms of your termination. You're not even gone yet.
Mm-hmm. Even on the terms of a termination contract, it gives you through September 13th. So why are you pulling down the signs unless you're all bent out of shape over what? You got caught with your pants down because you're not paying attention to what's going on in your parks? Because you've been absent? I mean, maybe the city needs to go back and look at what information they're receiving from the different departments. One of the things that they were saying that Parks was looking at was a water park and an Olympic training facility. Do I have any proof that in fact is happening or that those discussions were taking place? Not right now, but this is a small town after all. And eventually somebody will pop up. And what's been really amazing during this process is how many people want to throw money at me to establish a PAC, how many people want to start a recall petition and are ready to go out on the street and get signatures, and how many people want me to fight to stay there. And
out of those options, are you exploring any of them?
I can't tell you I'm not. Maybe I think probably the one that I'm least exploring is staying there. And that's because it's just...
Too messy at this point.
Yeah.
I'm not a masochist.
Right.
If you don't want me there, I won't be there. But you're doing it
for you to stay there. They're just going to keep.
Oh, it's just the next one. It's not under this administration, not under this leadership or lack of leadership. I mean, this park is an amazing place, and now you're going to turn it into a police state. You're going to come and I get it. Yeah, you're the boss lady. Got it. Yeah. Oh, what's your point? What's the purpose here?
Given what's happening here, would you say that all public parks are in danger of becoming developed?
100%. If Virginia Key falls, I've said it before and I'll say it again.
It'll be a domino effect.
There is not a single park in Miami that is not at risk of being developed or being commercialized.
How can we, as Miami citizens, protect these public places? Because they're important. They're the heartbeat of the city.
I think we need to pursue a charter amendment.
Yeah, it would really be, we have to do a referendum. I mean, we need to just say parks are parks.
And
can't develop
They're
parks.
hands off.
Untouchable.
Can't put stuff on parks.
Untouchable.
Because here's the problem.
But listen, if our politicians can't be good stewards of our shared common spaces, of our public spaces, then it needs to be removed from their hands so that they can no longer. You look at what happens at Bayfront Park. I understand that the folks from the downtown homeowners
DDA.
association are having all sorts of issues with the park. There are other areas that have similar problems, and people are trying to come together, but you can't pit a population against its government because that's not how this is supposed to work. So either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And they listen to all the stuff that's out there. So the challenge that I'm going to put out to all of our elected officials is that you take a moment, that you step back, and that you truly analyze what's happening here. And if you truly believe that you're doing service for our community, then take the steps necessary to clean up your mess. and then pursue whatever recourse you need to pursue with everyone that's there. And if you want to get rid of me, get rid of me. You want to make an example out of me, I can't stop you from doing that. But I'm going to defend myself to the best of my ability. And I'm not going to roll over and go away. And I'm going to keep fighting to protect this island and this park, because that's why I opened my mouth. And that's why I'm going to continue to open my mouth. And when the biggest criticism I get is that, oh, you shouldn't have said anything if you had stuff that was wrong. Well, you know what?
But that thought process is really scary for somebody to say you shouldn't have said
how horrible.
Anything. I mean, where do we live?
Yeah.
Last time I checked, this was the United States.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It sends such a loud message because most people have some sort of compliance issues, or a relative that has a job connected to the city or whatever. So you're basically, every time they do this, I always say it's like, it's not a glitch, it's the purpose. Mm-hmm. So when they say, here's Esther, powerful female entrepreneur, Cuban American, politically connected, right?
Well,
with a good business, and if we can do it to her, what do you think that the average person who's sitting in their apartment in Cayocho thinks? Like, holy crap! If they can do it to her and all her lawyers and all her employees, what can they do to me? They're going to crush me. So I better shut up.
That's such a good point. What does this mean for small business
But I think it's the
owners?
messaging. It's on purpose. It's not, this isn't a glitch. This isn't a mistake. It's the purpose is to make examples of people. Bill Fuller, like it's like, here's a powerful property owner and look what happened to him. So if you own the little fruteria or the barbershop, pulqueria, like you guess what? You better toe the line.
Better not step out of it.
You better not step out of line or you're going to get squashed.
So you've obviously dealt with the city on a number of cases in different capacities. Where would you say that the Virginia Key situation is now? And where do you think it's going to be headed? Or what are some possible scenarios from a legal standpoint that could play out?
So if you look at it through the lens of the Al Crespo criminal enterprise, it's like, okay, I think the thing we're going to do is wait and see what's next. What is the next move? What do they put there? She has a facility. It's a beautiful place. Are they just going to bring in another purveyor of
like a new tenant?
A new tenant that does the same thing? Or are we going to see it developed into a restaurant, into the homeless encampment, or whatever it is? So now we kind of have to wait and see what happens, right? What is it that they're going to do with the space? So pretending like Esther's not here, Esther's gone. What does that look like? We're not going to know until they do. Like the purpose is going to reveal itself at some point. When in the Country Club of Coral Gables, it was all happening, and it was like we eventually found out. Okay, here's it was a politically connected friend of the mayor that wanted to put in an expensive steakhouse. Mm-hmm. It eventually revealed itself why this person was all of a sudden being accused of not paying their rent and not taking care of the building and all the BS they come up with all of a sudden, And so I think that is what we're going to have to do is just see
slumlord tactics.
No, it's slumlord. It's just gangster. It's more gangster, to put in whoever they want to put in there and then call that progress, right? Whatever that looks like. You can look at maybe part of this was like a little bit of a rope-a-dope strategy. Come up with this crazy, ludicrous idea of putting the homeless on this island with no public transport, no services. Everyone knew it's a stupid idea, and like you were saying, like she was laughing at the idea. I mean, I think we all of us were like, "This is ridiculous."
I didn't laugh.
It's a dumb idea.
Exactly.
Like in their hearts, I know that they don't think that this is plausible.
At some level,
I didn't laugh at it. I didn't find it funny. I didn't find it humorous. What I saw was a development deal. Mm-hmm. And I was terrified. Yeah. And I had nothing left to do but defend myself and defend the island.
But she had no choice because it's going to replace her, right? So she speaks out.
More than that, no, listen, boom. Even if I weren't there, I don't think I would have reacted any differently. Yeah. Because I care about this park. Yeah. I grew up there. I mean, a lot of us did.
Let me take a step back because you asked me, like, what do we do? I think part of this is the way that, again, a breakdown of capitalism. The way I view it is these developers are doing what developers are supposed to do. Sometimes people get mad at me. I'm like, developers have a fiduciary duty to maximize profit for their shareholders and their investors. That's their job. The breakdown is not with the developers. The developers should be salivating over the $1 billion. It's $1 billion that the city of Miami has in real estate. Okay.
The leopard is being a leopard.
Right. They're doing exactly what they should do. But what we rely on is our elected officials and our city government to negotiate and safeguard that stuff. And that's the breakdown in the system. So I'm always like, there's nothing wrong with what the developers are doing, but it's like that. And I have a friend, Bob Powers, who always talks about Brickell. And he's like, I came here in 1980 and I looked at what Brickell looked like back then. He goes, David, you could have landed a 747 between the buildings. We made a decision to make Brickell look like it does today, like right? Like Manhattan. We made that decision. And he said, that's a fair decision, right? We as a community can decide to have a Brickell. And he's like, but what the shame of it is what should we have gotten in return for allowing that density?
Right.
World-class parks, world-class transportation, world-class schools, world-class, like everything. We could have gotten it. All you would have to say to the developer is like, I have something you want. You want to build 40 stories? Guess what?
Equity.
You're going to give me this.
So like in quality of life.
Well, but it's negotiating. Yeah, like to me, it's like I don't see it as like I don't want a handout from you, man. You're asking me for something you can't do, and I'm going to let you do it. But here's what I want in return.
Well, and at the end of the day, isn't that also beneficial to the developer over time because you now have a more valuable product that you can put out there? I mean, it's.
Well, it would also be the responsibility of the elected official to negotiate those terms, no? Because ultimately. And I see it kind of from a point of if the elected official who's supposed to represent the people doesn't stipulate those terms, but then they're gonna go to that developer and be like, "Hey, my election's coming up.
No,
I'm gonna let this slide." So is that like the relationship that ought to happen?
I just think that we have to build the safeguards. I mean, it's a problem everywhere, but here it's a particular problem. But we have to build those safeguards in place to where we have them. And one of the ways to build the safeguard in is just to have, like I said, that developer who did work in California and North Carolina, who said it's all over regulated. But one thing they do right is they dictate the green space. So there's no negotiating. It's like, I know full well if I'm developing 40 acres, 15 acres is park or whatever the rules are. Like don't give the temptation to the elected officials, right? Just build it right in the code. Like, like this idea of, like I'm maybe a little too sympathetic to this idea of like, let's develop all our parks. I mean, here's these parks. People need a place to live. We need, and I can see the attraction, and what you almost have to do is like, just take it away. Like, just be like, this is off the table. This is over here. You can't touch this. And I think that is the breakdown in the system, is just making a decision of, like I said, it would be as simple as saying parks are parks. That's not negotiable. No homeless shelters, no retail, no soccer stadiums. Parks stay parks. And it'd be as simple as that. We could do that. And then it gets more complicated of how do we want relationships with vendors to look? How do we want that to be administered? And do all that. I mean, DREAM, which is the Division of Real Estate Management. I mean, I think they're on their 4th or 5th director in the last 5 years. I mean, the department's a disaster. As far as I'm concerned, there should be a receiver put in place and just run all of the city's facilities.
We haven't had this discussion. I agree with you.
It's a disaster.
Receiver, what do you
like have an outside government, like have the federal government come in and run our assets. They're not being run. They're not being maximized. They're being weaponized, and there's
one of those safeguards you're referring to?
Well, I mean, that's such a fundamental breakdown of just like the city not doing its job, right? I mean, if you at the end of the day, what's going to come out is any non-compliance that Esther has is as a result of the city. We live in Shenandoah. We had a meeting the other day with the city building department. And the number one thing that the residents would say is like, dude, I applied for a driveway permit and it's been 14 months. It's a disaster. You guys suck. Like, this is terrible.
Well, their comeback is no, we're great.
No, they had, no, I think the guy did recognize it's horrible.
No,
and it's
no.
So what,
no,
but let me back up.
No.
But let me back up. What happens? What do people do? you go without a permit.
Right.
And you still do it anyways.
Well, you do it, but then guess what?
But then you're going to get reprimanded.
If
You get caught?
you're a political enemy.
Right.
Like, no. You're not going to get in trouble if you just keep your head low. They don't have enough people.
If you're not a thorn in their back.
We're not Coral Gables. We don't have someone running up and down the street saying, "Oh, look at what's this new driveway?" That's not what's happening. It's just that everyone's out of compliance because it's impossible to comply.
Well, they criminalized not being.
Well, that's on top of that.
Criminalize that. I mean, you're not. Who are you hurting? Is that like you run a stop sign and you're going to jail? I didn't hit anyone. I didn't really hit this. I rolled through, the whole rolled through excuse, or I stopped 3 feet ahead. You're going to jail.
Yeah.
This is what's happening today. You run a stop sign, you don't stop where you're supposed to, you're going to jail.
What would be some of the prescriptions, like in this proposal? What could be something, or like, because obviously politics is something, a game of compromise, right? What would be a compromise in this situation that you would accept or that would be acceptable legally?
I'll let you answer. I mean, it's a business. It's,
I don't, right now, I don't know. I mean,
like that's if the city's even willing to compromise.
I don't think they are. That's why I don't have an answer for you. I think it'd be negotiating against myself. And what's the point?
Yeah, you're going to see it. I mean, that's the thing. I said there's $1 billion worth of assets. It's like all the vendors at all the spaces, right? Like what happens to everybody? What happens to all these jobs, right? All her employees have to go find another place to work. Like it's this disruption that's on the thing. But I think that, again, I go to what needs to happen is we need to revisit this. Some people are talking about expanding the number of elected officials, right?
On the commission?
Yeah, let's make the commission.
Some more districts.
Let's expand it to 7. Some people talk about doing at large or whatever that looks like. But it's that, and that
Would
I
that
think
require a referendum to do that?
yes, that's what I'm saying. These are all charter revisions, right? But what's interesting about it is when Grace Solaris.
Well, how about we take elections away from that off-year cycle? Because we also have, people that are getting elected with very low turnout. So
Turnout's always going to be low, but I do agree that when you have off-year elections, like for example, if we were to have an election next year, which I imagine there's going to be a commission race up there, and you'll find that the people who participate the most in those off-year elections are the elder population.
Yep.
Well, because they also facilitate it. It's let me go and help you vote.
But I think that
they take them, bust them in.
Here's your paella and your pastelitos.
Exactly,
Paellas
your
buy
cafecito
I've seen it firsthand. Paellas will.
Pastelitos and croquetas also buy votes.
I'm not gonna lie here, but I've handed a couple paellas in my.
But let me
you shouldn't be allowed. No one should be. No one.
But let me finish the thought about the expanding the group, because there was a time when everyone was looking at expanding, they were comparing us to like Tampa, Orlando, like saying like this population should have this many reps, and we really should have 7 or 9 reps for the city of Miami. And it was interesting. It was Grace Solaris, who's a old time activist, and she, when I broached the idea to her, I was like, is this something like you've been at this a lot longer than me? Should we expand it? And she looks at me, this old, experienced Cuban American, ran for office, and she's like, David, we have 5 bank robbers. Your bright idea is to have 9 bank robbers.
Well,
that's how we're going to solve the problem.
Hey, you know what? Hold on. I'd rather take my chances with 9 bank robbers than with 2.
And then they say you could just do.
Maybe they faction up the bank robbers and they decide to rob. You know what I'm saying? Like they change the plan halfway through.
Yeah, but I don't know how well that works out.
I just love that response. And then there's also
eventually the snake eats its tail.
The problem is what you're talking about with the paella and other things that happen is then you also say, like I think the academic thinking is you need to expand it. You need to have a couple at-large seats. Like there's things you need to do. And they're saying, the problem with an at-large seat is it costs $1 million. You have to raise $1 million to run citywide in the city of Miami.
That's crazy.
And you can't do that without what? Taking the developer money. It's impossible. You cannot successfully run that race. So that's the thing. These are some of the realities of what we're talking about.
It's so unlikely that whatever or rather said, it's more of an accessibility, right? We talked about how, well, at least Jason brought up the fact that we need fresh blood, new faces. Fresh blood and new faces don't got no $1 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And even if they tried, right? Like, where you gonna get this million from, right?
My godfather. No.
Right. But see, that's that special interest because Paladino who got that.
Yeah,
You
he's
know?
gonna want something in return.
Yeah.
For sure. So I mean, like, it's difficult.
Paella? Maybe.
No, but they don't want to buy it.
I make a mean paella.
But how is it that I guess my question would be is, with the commission that we have currently, what options do we have? Because going back to my thing, that the things that you listed, you know, I'm always inclined to say sign this piece of paper because that's what I know.
Right.
But even I know that that's not the most effective process. But by the same stroke, if you don't do something that's per se legally binding, they're not going to take you serious. Because I could coordinate protest all day long, and they're just gonna
ignore it.
Okay,
Yeah.
those people don't vote anyways.
Yeah.
You know, so what is something that could be impactful in this situation?
And I think that I think that educating people, and I was going to read, I wrote an editorial in the Miami Herald today, and it was about Al Crespo's passing. And I say in the editorial, Crespo's legacy is showing that corruption is not inevitable. If residents who remain silent instead demand better, more transparent, and cleaner government, we can leave behind the ugliness and begin writing a new chapter to improve the situation at City Hall and throughout Miami. Let's celebrate Crespo by doing the hard work necessary to stop tolerating self-interest and unscrupulousness and demand cleaner, better government. And it's like, those are just words. Like, we got to do the work.
Look, at the end of the day, people have to show up and they have to go vote.
We have to do the work, but we also have to educate people. That's the problem. Like, here we are, we're taking time. You've invited us on here. Like, this is, to me, I'm not, and one of the Al Crespo legacies I have is like, enjoy the ride. You know, this is not a fun ride for Esther, but enjoy the theater of what we're doing. Enjoy it's Miami. You know, his byline, if you guys know what it was, it's Miami bitches. Like, that was how he ended every column. And it's like, this is the reality. And he had like a twinkle in his eye when it came to this stuff. Like, it wasn't just this like, we're screwed, this is all bad. It's like, oh, no, let's do the work. Let's make people aware of what's happening to Esther, to Ball and Chain, to these institutions that employ people and make our community interesting. And let's fight back and talk with your neighbors about it and get people to see that this is not what we want.
By the way, I love my neighbors because when I get home, they're like doing the go get them. And some of them have come over and said, keep at it. We're going to, these people go after the house. We're looking out. If there are any strange cars, I'll call you. And I'm like, on one hand, how sweet. And on the other hand, how sad that there's this expectation that, they're all like, keeping an eye out.
What's next? Where's the punch on? But I will tell you, the number one thing you hear in this case is, how do I help? They're asking, how do I help?
How do I help?
And I wish
a lot of people are asking,
I wish we had candidates. I wish we had, and I got to tell you something. I mean, I'm 52, she's 57. It's y'all. It's this next generation that's going to have to step up. And I feel like there is an attitude among some young people, like there's a learned helplessness that you get, that you see people struggle against this and they don't get the results. And it's almost like our time is passing.
But you know what, failing, I always tell, because I'm at a stage in life, or at least I thought I was. I may have had a setback because God knows, but I always said it's like I've never been one to have an issue with my age or aging, and it's the experiences that we get over time, and it's about taking chances, and starting Virginia Key Outdoor Center was a chance that I took. It was my big play. And I did it because I believed in this place as being an essential place. And I knew when nobody else believed in it, I knew that people would come. So I went for a long time without anything, driving my beat up old truck, which incidentally, I just got running again. My battery was dead. And it's like that anchor, but if you don't take a chance, you're never going to have a successful event. But if you do take a chance and you lose, that loss doesn't define you. Because you really, what have you lost? Are you going to put me any further back than I was in the beginning? I have my health. I have my family. I have my friends. And apparently today I have a bunch of people that are trying to figure out how to help me. And we all have our weaknesses. And for me, it's pride. And I admit that. I am prideful in that I don't know how to accept help. I'm fine helping anybody else out.
But
when it comes to asking for help or even accepting help, I'm learning how to do that. And it's something that I have to get past because the opportunities are there. And I have to find a way to appreciate that and to be thankful for it. Because there are a lot of people out there that have been trying to reach us, and I know some of them are getting frustrated. I apologize. Our voicemail is constantly full. We're trying to deal with customers and refunds. People trying to, I get so many calls. Are you going to be able to open? We want to come, but we want to come where you open. Are you going to open somewhere else? There really isn't anywhere else. It's not like beachfront property is, readily available or you can just pop up and start doing it. But it's so overwhelming. But at the same time, the harder they push and the more they try to defame and disparage me, the more that my stubborn streak comes out and I want to double down and say, bring it. Because, I said something in one of the videos and I have to do another video soon. They've been asking for it. I'll ask for videos. I never expected that. But, I said, we got a storm brewing and the one thing we know how to do in Miami is deal with storms. And we do. And it's time for everybody to stand up and take a little bit of that heat and tell these people that if they want to be that great next leader, then they need to start acting like that. And they need to start thinking about the people that they represent and their needs and stop with the nonsense. And you know what? Is that going to fix everything? It's not. But we need to not be punitive and incarcerate people for clerical issues, because basically that's what it is. We need to just stop voting for these oppressive, extremist, overwhelming government control on the people. And by the way, if they weren't paying attention, this isn't a partisan issue. We got people on the left, people on the right, and they all agree. And if you think that that's not going to be a problem come the next election cycle, I think you're going to be very surprised. Because what's happening right now is that people are really angry. And the more they push, the angrier they're getting. We are now almost a month after the commencement of this situation. And people aren't slowing down. I know they want to say, oh, it's not getting as much media coverage. Well, hold on to your shorts, folks, because there's more coming.
And that's why I feel, at least from a referendum standpoint, it actually could be successful because it's not a partisan issue. Even with the example of like the recall, it was kind of factioned, right? It's the people that like him or have some type of attachment to him versus the people that don't know him, don't care, or just know that it's wrong. But back to your point about the educating, I feel like the biggest problem with voters just overall is that there's not a sense of primacy, right? Like, since it doesn't, I can't see it, touch it, I don't care about it. I don't go to the beach. So, like whatever the case is, they're not going to feel a claim. So I feel like the only real way of doing that is by talking, by communicating with them. So this is just me. You should do the petition.
And it's interesting you say that because thank you guys for doing this, like this show, like we're also having a breakdown in media. Yeah. Right? Like when you look at the media coverage of what happened, like we don't have the robustness of the media coverage right now that can make it possible to cover this and educate it. So it becomes almost like a self-help, like Esther's having to do the educating, right? Where back in the day, maybe there would have been a Herald article about this.
Funny thing is that for the last 7 years, what we've been doing and what skills we've been honing is educating people. Educating people about the world around them, about what they see, about why climate affects them and how it affects their pocketbook. real life stuff, away from all the hoopla and all the, left and right nonsense. It's the real life application. That's what we've been working on for the last 7 years.
And that's why your facility was such an asset to the city, and why you're seeing that response from people, because they experience the value firsthand in everything that you all have been doing for so long. It was, and I think we talked about that last episode. It wasn't just come kayak. There's just so much involved for families, for bike riders, for people that just want to go and relieve some stress outside.
And then, just understanding what you're looking at and what you're seeing, it just gives you that added value for your space, because this is our shared space.
This is a public park. It belongs to the people.
Park. Yeah.
Right, David?
That's right.
Okay. Just making sure. I'm not saying
no.
Yes.
It's a public park. It's owned by the people.
Right.
And if we don't have good managers in place, then we have to demand good managers. And I hope that maybe, we only need one or two of our elected officials to stand up and say, I'm going to be that next great leader. So there's your challenge. Step up or step aside. Because if you're not going to step up, we don't need you.
I have a question for you, David. So I speculated in the last time that we spoke as to why DLP changed his mind. I said that it was, political reasons, not because he thinks it's a good idea or he likes it, but because he needs to be able to claim that I did something about the homeless issue, right? I proposed that both DLP and Carollo are going to run for mayor in 2025. So why do you think that he changed his mind?
I have no idea. I was watching the meeting and it was, was absolutely like, I had to break the news to some people. They're like, no, Dave, like you're confused. Like it was voted down. It's like, no, it was brought back by DLP. He was able to do it from a rules of order perspective because he was part of the losing side. He was able to redo the vote. No, he was on the, yes, he was on the winning side. That's right. Yeah. He was on the winning side. So therefore he could bring it back and change his vote to allow it.
To the losing side.
Yeah, what's the exact, but the idea was he was able to bring it back so he could vote in favor of it. And I don't know what happened. I don't, the realpolitik of that is hard to keep up with. I actually rewatched the meeting to try to understand if there was it. And I got to be honest with you, like, I don't know. We will see because of what happens next. If there's a steakhouse that goes in there, we're going to know that there was a goal. If there's going to be a development there, we're going to know. Like somebody, we won't know until we do, which is really a problem with our transparency and our, like someone should be able to ask DLP, why did you change your vote?
Because that's to me is like,
I haven't even read, like I don't know that anyone's asked him a question.
His initial criticism was so spot on. He was so on point.
But what I'm saying is no one even added.
And he even said it. He even said himself, there's maybe room in my district for this.
Yeah.
It wasn't an issue of pushing it off to anybody else. He was like, why? Because you have a population that's already, living there on the street, but they're living there. And because this is how you start treating them. This is how you get them off the street. And here we are.
So yeah, we don't have an answer for you.
Because I speculated. To me, my whole thing was like,
have you asked him?
I don't have a relationship with him like that.
Send him an email. Do what everybody's been doing. Pick up a phone, make a phone call, send an email, tag him on social media. I understand that phones at City Hall have been ringing quite aggressively, and I'm going to remind everyone that we still have to save Virginia Key, and that if they go to our website at VKOC.net and click on Save Virginia Key, all the contact information for all of our politicians is there, and contact them all, the mayor, the city manager, all 5 commissioners, and tell them what you're demanding, and that's codified protection for the island. And we're going to start with that, and then we're going to move forward, and we're going to make sure that we're going to protect the rest of our public assets for the public.
How many signatures you bargain you need to do something like that?
10,000. It's doable. I mean, it's so doable. It's doable. I think one of the things
you can do that.
Well, but the problem is, here's the problem.
I got a lot of volunteers ready to hit the road.
But the problem is that you do need the funding to make it is hard.
That's probably where you would need a PAC in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have the funding.
You
You got to have the. And I don't say this in a this is a dismissive way, but you got to have the kids, and the kids got to be on the street, and you got to just it's just such legwork to do, and it costs money. Like again, it's like the politics. Like just this, it costs money to make this done. I've seen you do incredible things, but it costs money. Like that's how it goes. It costs money. I mean, we're not talking millions of dollars, but we're talking, it's real money.
Tens of thousands
You got to
of
pay
dollars,
people to go do this stuff. It's the volunteer. It's just hard. It's hard to do.
The problem with volunteers, especially when it comes to like anything political, is that it's not on your terms.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you don't really have you
don't get to
control of
say
the outcome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it's volunteer. Like charity, you can't pick your charity. You know what I mean? If I make a
Right.
donation, you can't tell me, no, 500. You know what I mean? It's what I got. So you can do like a volunteer only thing, but if it's something where it's like you have a time limit or you have like X amount, and then unfortunately you could say like you get to the number, but there's a fallout rate on those petitions too. So it's like,
and it has to be done right.
There's
The
another way.
petition has to
Wait,
be
hold
done
on. But
right.
there's another way to get it to referendum, and that's that. I think 3 commissioners.
Yeah, and that's not going to
That's not
happen.
Three.
There's no
three
three.
commissioners.
You probably couldn't get
Oh, you took
one.
3? What, to say that they're gonna
let's
fight?
assume
We
let's
can't
assume-
get 3
Hands off
commissioners.
the park.
Hold on. We can't say-
no.
We can't have 3 commissioners that are willing to stand up and say we're going to protect our parks.
No.
Someone has to flip.
We don't have 3 commissioners
What
that are
three
willing to
commissioners?
stand up.
Okay, let's say you have
and-
the 2. Let's say you
and
have the
protect
2 right
parks
now,
for the
which
people?
is King,
No.
No, Reyes and Russell.
Right.
Reyes and Russell.
and Russell.
We lose Russell at the end of the year.
Mhm.
Yeah, you just
I
don't have the 3
understand
votes.
that Commissioner King was under a lot of pressure for her vote from her community.
In that they didn't want to put it like they put everything.
No, they didn't. They didn't like her vote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they thought it was a horrible
So she's the
position
most
to
likely
take.
to flip.
But wait, I
Maybe.
have a naive question. What about the mayor?
Apparently, what I heard was that he was told that he couldn't veto this.
Why
don't-
not?
Because it's not I don't know. I can see why it wouldn't be a
'Cause it's a pilot
vetoable
program?
thing. It's a pilot program.
You mean like the 20-year pilot programs that take place in Miami?
I
Maybe.
don't.
How do you
think
stop
that's
pilot
part of it.
programs?
But the point is, I don't know that he can veto it.
But it's
It
a
would-
budget item. I mean, how do you not?
No.
It's unfortunate though, because when Francis Forrest sought his Strong Mayor initiative, I was a supporter of that, and I thought that needed to happen, especially in light of what we were
But
expecting.
that's a perfect
and what
example.
we've seen.
But the Strong Mayor is the perfect example of like redoing. Mayor Francis came in and tried to immediately change to the Strong Mayor form of government, and I called. One of the things that I do is I call the academics. Like, what's the best thinking on this? Like, show me the academic papers. Like, should we have a strong government? And I talked to a couple of different professors of local government. They're like, 100%. The city, the size of Miami, needs to have a strong mayor.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, but I have 2 further observations. As formulated, this plan sucks.
Yeah, there were
You
some
should
things in
never
there that were
support this.
just.
And 2, you're Miami. You can't handle it. Like you can't have nice things. Your system, your ecosystem can't function
It's
under
too
this.
unilateral.
And that's what, it was an interesting observation.
So what is the role of the mayor? Pretty much just
Well, you see the role of the mayor. Like it's like a promotional, like it's
spokesperson for the
But
city.
there's nothing wrong. I mean, I gotta say something. He's done. I gotta say something. Like he's kind of done embrace that role, right? He's on thing. He's promoting Miami, getting people to move here. Like that.
Yeah, and he's
I'm
done
not
some good
saying
stuff to
that may
showcase
not
the
be the
city.
best use of that because he doesn't have a vote, and
Right.
they've kind of gotten rid of his.
Well, does he not have a vote because he doesn't chair commission, or he just doesn't have a vote?
He doesn't have a vote. His job is all he can do is veto.
Mhm.
That's the form of
So
government
if
that
he
we have.
shared commission, he could control. Well,
No, he couldn't do anything. He could sit and control the agendas to some extent, but no, he doesn't have a vote. So that's it. So that's where you're at. I mean, it's a very powerless position. It's interesting because they're talking about like DLP or Carollo running. That's a step down. I mean,
Right.
your level of power goes down significantly,
yeah,
but
that's
you're
just
the
really
mayor of
messed up.
Miami.
But that's just really messed up. It just doesn't sound
Yeah.
like. If you try explaining that to the average person, they'll be like, "No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Mayor's the guy in charge."
It doesn't make sense, but I think we should end it here. I want to thank you guys so much for coming and sharing. And I hope next time you're here is to share some good news.
That we formed a pack and we're taking over the world.
Maybe. I think that would be good too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. It's our pleasure to have you here, sharing and helping us understand a little more of everything that's been going on. And
This is
thank
great.
you for keeping up with it, because it takes a special person.
Palante.
Yep. To
Special.
no, not that kind of special. No, you definitely you show a lot of strength and a lot of commitment that is, I mean, unfortunately it's not the common anymore. So the fact that this happened to you.
Thank you. And I'll keep it on. I'll keep going as long as I can.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. David, thank you so much for sharing
thank you.
and for helping us understand a lot more about what's going on. And Nadir, thank you. We should definitely do this.
Yeah,
more
Nadir,
often.
let's do this. I love y'all's solutions-based approach, right? It's like we can sit here and talk all day. It's like, what do we do? But what do we do?
Yeah.
What do we do? You know,
Absolutely.
you guys both bring it back to us like, okay, what's the solution? Like, let's do it.
Right.
Let's do it.
Yeah, well, you said it yourself. Worth without action don't really move anything forward. And that's what we want. We want a solution for you, for the city of Miami. And we want to make sure that our parks are untouchable.
Thank you.
So thank you to everybody for listening and watching.
Make sure you vote. You still got an hour left.
Please make sure you vote. Make sure you understand how the process works. And we will see you next time.